yarnivores and spiderettes. Fiber Spider back again with another tutorial just for you. Yes, and today I am continuing on with a going trend of mine at the moment. This is the Corded Shells Rectangular Blanket. Yes, I've already done a shawl. I've already done the stitch. Now, the stitch, it's done in rows back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. I mean, you can make it whatever dimensions you want. This, however, is a rectangular blanket starting at the middle and working its way out. So if you're using a color change yarn, this is ideal for it, indeed. Also, the way that the lines sort of radiate outwards at the corners, it looks really cool. And so this is the dead center, and I've got a lot of fabric to work with here, so bear with me. Absolutely love, 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 love how this came out. So like I said, this is the rectangular version. I did also figure out a square format if any of you are interested, but because 9 times out of 10, when I come out with a square blanket, somebody always says, do you have a rectangular format? So, you know what? I'm nipping it in the bud, and I'm starting with a rectangle format from the Leap. Okay, that being said, for this project, I used 4 of these skeins of mandala in the colorway of in the colorway of centaur. Yes, and for those of you that don't know, it is 590 yards, it is a weight of 3, and it is 100% acrylic. And so yes, I ended up needing about 4 of these for my finished product, and I am really pleased with the results. Also, I used, excuse me, a size H 5mm hook, which I thought goes well with this weight of yarn. You can use really whatever you want to use. That being said, as far as the dimensions of the rectangle, you can change that if you are of a mind to do so. If you want to have it longer or shorter, that will of course change the dimensions of your rectangle. This I felt worked out fine for me, although you can play with it by all means. It's just a matter of changing the number of chains in the middle, and you can break it down from there. That being said, let's get started. And as a treat, yes, it's only a 3-round, excuse me, it's a 3-round repeat. So it's pretty darn easy. Let's get to it. Okay, round 1. The setup round. Now, this is the trickiest round, I would say, out of the entire project, so bear with me. Alrighty, so now it is in essence a multiple of 6 plus 1 for the base chain, with a little bit of a caveat there, okay? So, and that I'm going to explain. Now, because, let me just scooch this down right here. We're going to need 12 double crochets in one chain. Well, there is a way that I figured out, a way around that, and I'm going to show you that in just a jiff. All right, so basically we're going to start off with a slip knot as per usual, and start by chaining 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then slip stitch to the first chain. And you're probably thinking, all right, what are we doing? Well, this technically counts as one chain, okay? And this will make more sense later. And from now, we're going to go up the length of the center. So, and it's a multiple of 6 plus 1. So this counts as 1. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So that's the multiple of 6 plus the 1. Now to do the 1, chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and slip stitch into that 5th chain from the hook. And there you go. Now, yes, I know this looks really weird at the moment, but it works. The first time I tried it, it looked god awful and messy as all get out. This works a lot better, I found. So from here, we're going to start by chaining up 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn the work so that we're working into our chain this way. Okay? And we need a total of 12 double crochets. It's 6 groupings of 2 separated by chain 1 space. We're going to walk through it, of course. So we've got 1 and 2, chain 1, 3, 4, chain 1, 5, 6, chain 1, 7, 8, chain 1, 9, 10, chain 1, 11, and 12. Yeah, that's a lot of double crochets that would ordinarily go into just one chain. So that's why I did the extra bit there. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12. Okie dokie. So now we get to work our way along the length. And we shall get right to that. Give me one sec. Okay, so now going down the length of the chain, we're going to be skipping 2 chains, and we're going to work sort of through the back bumps, if you will, in a sense. What I like to do is I like to go through 2 loops, and I'm going to show you that up close, but we have to skip 2 chains. So that would be what? We worked into this one here. So skipping 1, 2, working into the 3rd with a double crochet. And like I said, I like to go underneath 2 loops, makes it a little bit stronger. Do a double crochet. And I'm not chaining in between. So double crochet, and then skip another 2 chains going into that 3rd right here with 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, skip the next 2 chains going into the 3rd again with just a double, skip the next 2 chains going into the 3rd with 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, two doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, okay, skip the next 2 chains 1 and 2, going into that third with just a double. Skip the next 2 chains going into the third with 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles. Now, of course, if you can find and figure an easier way of doing this that works better for you, by all means, don't let me stop you. This is just what I found worked for me. Okay, so let me just look and see how we're coming along. Very nice. Very good. So it's just that alternating repetition that we have, a double, cluster, double, cluster, double, cluster, so on and so forth. And of course, you can, change it up with more multiples of 6 if you want. So right now, skipping the next 2 chains, going into the next one with a double. And yeah, it can be it can be a little bit tricky, but like I said, this is the most difficult round of the entire project. So after this, it's kind of easy street. All right, so from here, skip those last 2 chains, and then we're going to go directly into that first circle that we created, that ring, and we're going to do our 12 doubles again. So that's 1, 2, chain 1, 3, 4, chain 1, 5, 6, chain 1, 7, 8, chain 1, 9, 10, chain 1, 11, and 12. Okay, again, I always double check. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. So you should have your big cluster grouping on one end, big one on the other end, and then 3 clusters in the middle. And that is, of course, if you want this ratio of a dimension for your blanket. If you want to add an additional multiple of 6, you would have another one of these clusters. If you want it to be, less long and more wide, I would suggest perhaps doing only 2 of these in the middle. But yeah, that being said, let's work our way down the other side. Alrighty, so to work our way down the opposite side, it's actually really a lot easier than the first one. So I'm going to go directly from where we are, no chains, going into the underside of this double crochet with a double crochet. Now, the only thing is that, right now we're only going underneath 1 loop. And honestly, I'm not crazy about it, but it works in the grand scheme of things. I mean, I really prefer to have 2 loops, but, well, we do what we can. So from here, going into the bottom side of this cluster, right underneath that loop, going to make another cluster. So that is 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles. So we've got 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, and then double crochet into the base of the next double, cluster into the base of the next cluster. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, double into the base of the next double, cluster into the base of the cluster, 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, almost there, double into the base of the next double, and we are at the end. So now, just going to do a slip stitch into the top of that first double crochet. Just be sure to go underneath both loops at the top there, and slip stitch. Okay, now to get into the right placement for round 2, slip stitch into the next stitch, the next double, slip stitch into the chain 1 space, slip stitch into the next, slip stitch into the next, and slip stitch into the chain space. Now, you're probably thinking, all right, why there? Well, that's because this right here that we just worked into is going to be a corner, as well as this is also going to be a corner. This is actually going to be the width, the top edge of our blanket. Eventually, we're going to get there. So this is a corner, this is a corner, and on the other side, this is a corner, and this is a corner. It will make more sense as we keep going, and that is exactly what we're going to do. So let us proceed with round 2. All right, round 2. Okay, so we are starting in the corner, which to me, it just feels like a good place to begin and end our rounds here. So I'm going to start by chaining up 3 into that same space, double crochet, chain 1, 2 double crochets for a cluster. And that chain 3 does count as a double crochet. So we've got 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles. Then into this middle chain 1 space, 1 double crochet. And then into the other corner, another cluster, 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles. Okay. Now into the chain 1 space of this cluster, another cluster. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, and for the length of this side, whenever you see a double crochet on his lonesome, just do a front post double crochet. You're going around the post and pull up your loop. Give it some slack. You don't want it to be too tight, otherwise your work will pucker. So pull up that loop, pull through 2, pull through 2. And then every time you reach a cluster inside that chain 1 space, make another cluster, 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles. And that's really all there is to it for the rest of this side. So front post double, around that double, into the chain 1 space, cluster. And that is how I'm going to be referring to them from now on, just as a cluster. And that is 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles from now on. And then a front post double, and then a cluster in the chain one space. Front post double. Okay, we've reached the other side. So in the first two chain one spaces, we need clusters. So in that first space, cluster. In the second chain one space, cluster. Okay, in the third space, that middle one, just one double crochet. And then into the next two chain one spaces, clusters. So two doubles, chain one, two doubles. Next chain one space, two doubles, chain one, two doubles. And of course, really, you can use any yarn that you want for this kind of a project. By the way, this video is not sponsored. I just love the yarn. And the only thing I don't think that I would recommend is using a variegated yarn that does a quick color change, very rapid color change, because you would lose a lot of the texture and the detail. That's just, with most patterns, I find that to be the case. So that being said, we've reached a double, so front post, cluster in the chain one space, front post around the double, cluster in the chain one space, front post around the double, cluster in the chain one space, front post around the double, and in the next chain one space, cluster. And then to finish up round two, slip stitch into the next two doubles and into the chain space again, because that is our corner spot. So slip stitch, slip stitch, slip stitch. And there you go. So we already have some ridges with these front posts going on already. And pretty soon, we're going to start having them on either end as well. Let's continue, shall we? Yes, we shall. Okay, round three. All right, so now rounds 3 through 5 are going to be the repeat for the entire project. Yes, it's that easy. But of course, we're going to get through it to it. Okay, so we are already in our corner space. So start off by chaining up 3. Now, round 3, we're going to be starting our corners with double clusters. and that is going to consist of 8 double crochets. It's going to be 4 groupings of 2 double crochets each, separated by a chain 1 space. I'll walk you through it, trust me. So chain up 3, and that counts as our first double. So we've got 2 doubles, chain 1, 3, 4, chain 1, 5, 6, whoa, hello, 6, chain 1, 7, and 8. Okay, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 4 groupings of 2 separated by chain 1 spaces. Awesome. Okay. And now we're going to front post around the solitary double. Again, give it slack. And in this corner, another double cluster. So 1, 2, chain 1, 3, 4, chain 1, 5, 6, chain 1, 7, and 8. So every 3 rounds, you're going to need to do your double clusters in the corners. Now, when we started off, that's sort of the exception to the rule where we did 12 because we needed to establish the sides. But right now, we're just sort of reinforcing and having our corners grow outwards. So let's keep going. Alrighty, so we have our double cluster and we have a cluster over here. However, we need a double crochet in between, and that's going to help things grow out even more so. So in between these 2 doubles and the next 2 doubles, right in between here, add a double crochet. Okay, then as per usual, in the single chain spaces, add a cluster. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles. Front post around the double. Cluster in the chain 1 space. Front post around the double. Cluster in the chain 1 space. See, the sides are mind-numbingly easy. It's just the corners, that's where you have to pay attention, at least initially. So cluster in the cluster, front post around the double. Cluster in the cluster. Front post around the double. Okay, we're almost there. Okay, cluster in the cluster. And right here is our corner. So we need a double crochet in between, like we did before. And now into our corner space, double cluster. So that's 1, 2, chain 1, 3, 4, chain 1, 5, 6, chain 1, 7, 8. Perfect. Okay, front post around the double. Corner space, we need a double cluster. So 1, 2, chain 1, 3, 4, chain 1, 5, 6, chain 1, 7, and 8. Okay, 2, 4, 6, 8. Who do we appreciate? Yarn, yarn, yarn. Okay, so we are getting there. It's coming along nicely already. All right, so now, again, we need to add a double crochet in between here. So scoot that one in there. And again, down this side, clusters in the clusters, front posts around the doubles. It's really that easy along the sides. If I can get my act together. So 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, front post around the front post, another cluster, and I know that this is like the third project in a row that I've utilized this stitch, but it's so reminiscent of the granny stitch that I totally fell in love with it, except it has more texture to it. And I really wanted to really explore the possibilities with what I could do with this stitch. And like I mentioned, I did figure out the square format, so if there is enough interest, there's a good possibility that I will show you how to do a square format as well. And I figured out another project on top of that as well. So by no means am I trying to bore you. Trust me. I'm just trying to show you that you can take a simple stitch and you can really do a lot with it. And that's really what I'm about, showing you options. Okay, we're almost there. We're almost at the end. We've just been doing as we have normally been doing by clusters in the clusters, front posts around the front posts. And now see here, it looks a little bit muddled because that's where we did our slip stitch. But in between here, right in this sort of gap here, is where we do our double crochet. And then slip stitch. And we do need to get to our corner. So the corner is that second chain 1 space. So we slip stitched into the first double, then slip stitch into the next, slip stitch into the chain 1 space, slip stitch into the next stitch, and the next chain 1 space. Boom. So it's kind of difficult to see, but there's one space here, and there is one space here. It's that space in the middle. That's our corner. Now, what you might want to consider doing is getting either safety pins or scrap bits of yarn. or stitch markers that can open and close, and put them in the corners so that you don't get lost. It's a viable option, at least initially, when your corners are not quite so distinct because you're like, all right, is it over here or is it over here? No, it's right here, but I won't judge. Do what works for you. So this is where we're currently at. Let's continue on to round 4. Round 4. All right, so we are smack dab in the middle corner here. So chain up 3, 1, 2, 3, double crochet into that same chain space. So that's 2, chain 1, 2 more doubles for our first corner cluster. There we are. And we have our next cluster space right there. So cluster into the chain 1 space. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles. Okay. Around the front post, you guessed it, do a front post. Okay, so in this corner, as you can see, we've got 1 space, 2 space, 3 space. So yeah, we're going to be doing 3 clusters. We have 2 over here because we want to, again, get into that corner. So into that first chain 1 space, do a cluster. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles. Okay. And then into the next 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles. To the next chain 1 space, 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles. All right. And then front post around this new double crochet. And then do your clusters into the clusters and front posts around the front posts. Just as we have been doing. So I'm going to do the rest of this side off camera, and then when I come up to the corner, I will meet back up with you. All right, so I'm almost to the end here of this side, so do my cluster in the cluster. And my front post around the double. And we need to make our 3 clusters. So into that first chain 1 space, cluster. Going to the next chain 1 space, cluster. And I didn't add a chain 1 space, my bad. So 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles. Next chain 1 space, 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles. Okay. Do. Perfect. Okay. And then front post around the front post and into this corner, cluster, cluster, cluster. Two doubles, chain one, two doubles. Next, chain one space, two doubles, pull out some more yarn, story of my life. Two doubles, chain one. Two doubles. Okay. Last chain one space. Two doubles, chain one, two doubles. Okay. And then for the rest of this side here, it's business as usual, where you front post around those solitary doubles and cluster in the clusters. Okay. And I will meet back up with you when I am just about at the end. All right, so just keep on keeping on, and I'll be right back. Okay, so we're almost at the very end of round 4. Again, this chain one space, do another cluster. So that's two doubles, chain one, two doubles. And we just need to get into the center, so it's slip, slip, slip. So slip stitch, slip stitch, and slip stitch. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Looking so pretty already. All right, onwards to round 5. Okay, last but not least, round 5 for the repeat. Now, this is going to be a little bit confusing, but when we were doing our double clusters, we were starting it off. So when we did our double cluster, we had to create a new double crochet. Well, right now, we already have spaces going on. So this will make more sense as we go on, like most things. Right now, all we need to do is chain 3, and we need a cluster in here, so add another double, chain 1, and 2 more doubles. See, now that we are established with our pattern a little bit more, we're going to add our solitary double crochet in between here, in between where we first started. So right here with our double, and then into the next space, do another cluster. So what I'm getting at is that the next round, when we do our double cluster, we don't need to create a new double because we just did. And that's how it's going to go on for the rest of the whole project. I'll walk you through it. So we got our cluster, and then front post around the front post, cluster into the cluster, and double crochet in between, cluster in the cluster, double in between the clusters, and cluster in the cluster. Okay, front post around the front post, cluster in the cluster, and keep on in this fashion all the way across the edge, clusters in the clusters, front posts around the front posts, and I will meet back up with you for this edge, this side here, okay? I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm almost to this side here, so again, cluster in the cluster, and I suppose that you could say that instead of it being rounds 3 through 5, it's 4, 5, and 6, as opposed to 3, 4, 5, it's 4, 5, 6 for the repeat. If you want to be technical, I guess you could say that I misspoke myself. I do apologize. By no means trying to be confusing in any which way, shape, or form, but it does happen. Okay, so I got my cluster. In between the clusters, we do a double, and then cluster in the corner. And then double in between the clusters, cluster in the cluster. And of course, I'm also going to have timestamps in the description box as always, naturally. Front post around the front post, cluster in the cluster, and then double in between the clusters, cluster in the cluster, double in between the clusters, cluster in the cluster, and front post around the double, cluster in the cluster. Okay. Da-da-da-dum. Okay, so just again, keep on keeping on in this fashion all the way across, and I will meet back up with you for the finishing join up. All right, so to finish up round 5, I'm almost there. I just did a cluster here, need a front post here. Easy peasy. And then another cluster. In the cluster. And then, last but not least, I need to do my double in between the clusters. And slip stitch into the top of that first double crochet. Okay, and then to get where we need to be, slip in the next one and then slip into that corner space. Okay, now for good measure, I am going to go and do round 6 so that I am nice and thorough in saying, yes, the repeat is rounds 4 through 6. Excuse me. Be right back. Okay, round 6. Start by chaining up 3. And we need to have our double cluster. So that's 2, chain 1, 3, 4, chain 1, 5, 6, chain 1, 7, 8. Okay. And then, because we already have our double established, front post around the double, and then cluster into the cluster. Front post around the front post. Cluster in the cluster. Front post around the front post. Well, just the double, but it's still there. And then into this corner here, we need our double cluster. So that's 1, 2, chain 1, 3, 4, chain 1, 5, 6, chain 1, 7, 8. Front post around the double. Cluster in the cluster. Front post around the front post. And so forth for the rest of this side. And I will meet back up with you for this end bit here. Alrighty, so we're just about to the other side. So cluster into the cluster. Front post around the double. And we need the double cluster into the corner. So 1, 2, chain 1, 3, 4, chain 1, 5, 6, chain 1, 7, 8. Okay, front post around the double. Cluster into the cluster. And so forth until we reach the next corner. Front post. Cluster. Front post. And double cluster. 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 more doubles, that makes 4, chain 1, 5, 6, chain 1, 7, 8. Okay. Front post around the double. And keep on keeping on in the fashion of cluster in the cluster, front post around the front post, all the way until you reach the other side. I'll meet you for the join up. I'll be right back. Okay. All right, so we're almost done with round 6. I just need to do my cluster in the cluster. Chain 1, 2 more doubles. And then front post around the double. And then again, because this is a double cluster, we need to get to that center. So slip stitch into the first one, slip stitch into the next stitch, and the chain space. Then we have to get to that next chain space. So slip stitch, and slip stitch. Don't forget, yes, when you're doing your double clusters, you need to get into that center chain 1 space there. Okay, so that being said, that concludes the tutorial. Just be sure to repeat rounds 4, 5, and 6 over and over and over, and you can't go wrong. Because in the next round, see down here, we had our double cluster. Well, we have our double cluster here. So as you can see, you need 3 clusters, and then your double crochet, your front post double crochet. So it'd be cluster, 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 front post, cluster, 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 front post. And then the following round, it would be a cluster, double in between the clusters, cluster, double in between the clusters, and then the following round, it would be the double cluster again. So it's just those 3 rounds over and over and over, and you can't go wrong. And what's really cool about this pattern is that it already has a really nice edge to it. Again, just be very careful that when you're doing your front post double crochets that you give it slack. Otherwise, it will curl, okay? And we don't want that. Okay, so aside from a little confusion on the row repeats, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I know I did. It's a lot of fun. Once you get into the hang of it, it really is one of those carefree, mindless patterns, and it's great for, throwing on a movie in the background. Fabulous. And until next time, I hope you have a fabulous, fabulous day. I hope you enjoy this project. If you like the tutorial, please give a little thumbs up. Please subscribe because I do try to post often, whether it's crocheting or knitting or audiobook narrations, Happy Mail unboxings, product reviews, you name it. And of course, my other YouTube channel, Fiber Spider Games. Would love to see you there. And of course, my Etsy store, my Teespring store. And I can't thank you guys enough for the amount of support that I have in every which way. I thank you. So until next time, I want all of you to stay inspired, stay caffeinated, stay stitching, and please stay safe. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I will see you in my next episode. Bye for now.